Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, I am so incredibly pumped to have you here today because we're going to unpack what is honestly one of the most wild, high-stakes, against all odds, true stories in modern business history. I mean, picture this. It's the summer of 1973. We've got a 28-year-old former Marine, and he has put literally everything on the line to keep this massive, sprawling logistics operation alive. But he's staring right into the abyss. Every single bank said no. Every investor pulled out. His back isn't just against the wall is literally crumbling behind him. So, how on earth did a company that was basically dead on arrival survive to become the absolute global titan it is today? Let's dive right into this crazy story of FedEx.
$5,000. Now, what's so terrifying about this specific number is that back in July of 1973, this was it. This was the entire remaining bank balance for the whole FedEx Corporation. Not a single cent more. When you're trying to run a national network, paying for planes, pilots, sorting hubs, and ground transport, $5,000 is basically pocket change. I mean, they were completely, utterly drained.
And to really grasp the sheer panic of the moment, you got to look at this next number. $24,000. That was their jet fuel bill. And it wasn't due, next month or next quarter. It was due in a matter of days. So just do the math there. You have $5,000 in the bank and a massive, completely non-negotiable $24,000 bill breathing right down your neck. No fuel means planes don't fly. Planes don't fly, packages don't move. Packages don't move, FedEx ceases to exist. Period. So, the clock is relentlessly ticking. Investors are dodging his calls. What does the founder do? Well, he does something so incredibly impulsive, so totally desperate, that I guarantee you zero business advisors on the planet would ever recommend it. He takes that final $5,000, hops on a flight to Las Vegas, Nevada, and he sits down at the blackjack tables. Seriously. He risks the last breath of his entire company on a game of cards. It's pure madness. But to really understand how we even got to this wild, reckless moment, we actually need to rewind a bit.
Section 1. The Origins. A C-grade idea.
Okay, so snap back to the mid-1960s. Fred Smith is studying at Yale University, and he writes this economics term paper. His big thesis? In a world that's moving super fast toward computerization, there's going to be a massive need for reliable overnight delivery. Well, his professor looks at this and basically says, yeah, this is totally impractical. Boom. C-grade. But Smith doesn't let that stop him. He graduates, becomes an officer in the Marine Corps, and goes off to serve 2 really grueling tours in Vietnam. And that experience, it completely shifted his perspective. He came home with this deep, burning desire to build things up rather than tear them down. And it was exactly that drive that finally led him to launch FedEx in 1973.
So how does a C-grade theory actually become a reality? Well, after Vietnam, Smith is working down in Arkansas at his stepfather's struggling aircraft maintenance company, and he keeps running into these agonizing, system-crippling delays just trying to get basic parts delivered. It's driving him crazy. But this real-world frustration actually reignites that old Yale idea. He realizes the existing point-to-point delivery methods are just totally broken. So he designs something revolutionary, a hub-and-spoke system. The concept is kind of brilliant in its simplicity. Every package from across the country flies into one central hub at night, gets sorted in just a few hours, and then flies right back out to its final destination before morning.
And man, did he go all in on this launch. Smith didn't just dip his toe in the water. He took his entire personal inheritance, $4 million, and just poured every last penny into this completely unproven idea. He kind of naively thought, investors will obviously line up to back this. Yeah, they didn't. But through sheer, stubborn force of will, by late 1972, he manages to scrape together $80 million in loans and equity. So they officially launch in '73. It's this massive logistical setup, 14 small planes. And on night 1, they delivered exactly 186 packages across 25 cities. Honestly, the scale of his conviction was staggering, even if those initial package counts really weren't.
But as you can guess, the honeymoon phase ended fast. Even though the core hub-and-spoke system was actually working perfectly, like the concept was proving itself every single night, the business itself was violently collapsing. They burned through $13.4 million in those first 2 years alone. On top of that, global fuel costs were absolutely exploding, just destroying their margins, regulatory red tape was mounting, even Smith's own family was panicking, basically certain they were going to lose everything. So in a last-ditch effort, Smith makes an emergency pitch to General Dynamics for funding. The board sits, listens, and flatly rejects him. No deal. And there was absolutely no plan B.
Now, you might be wondering, why didn't he just shut the doors and declare bankruptcy? Well, years later, when people asked him that, Smith talked about his team. He felt this intense, unshakable loyalty to the pilots, the sorters, the everyday people who bought into his crazy vision. As the quote perfectly captures, "If we go down fighting." He absolutely refused to let the story end simply because he surrendered. He felt he owed it to the people who literally followed him into the fire.
And it's exactly that fighting spirit that brings us right back to our climax. It's July 1973. Smith is on the flight home from that totally failed General Dynamics pitch. He's looking at the impending doom of his entire life's work, $5,000 in the bank, a $24,000 fuel bill due. So he diverts to Vegas, he hits the blackjack tables, and somehow, miraculously, defying basically all statistical odds, he wins. He turns that last $5,000 into $27,000. He immediately wires it back to Memphis, covers the fuel bill, and basically buys FedEx exactly one more week of life.
Which takes us to Section 2, the nuance, beyond the blackjack table.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because we have to separate the myth from the reality. The headline that everybody loves to share is "Desperate Vegas Gamble Saves Company," right? Sounds like a movie. But Fred Smith himself has been incredibly clear about this. That $27,000 was not decisive. It did not magically fix a multi-million-dollar cash flow problem. All it did was buy a few days of runway and give the team a psychological boost, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, their luck was turning. The thing that actually saved FedEx, it was what he did with that bought time. Smith went out and relentlessly, tirelessly raised an additional $11 million in funding. The Vegas money just kept the lights on. The brutal, totally unglamorous grind of raising capital is what actually rescued the business.
And the explosive aftermath of that resilience was incredible. Once they got through that choke point, the growth was astronomical. By 1976, so literally just 3 years after Vegas, FedEx is hitting $75 million in revenue and actually turning a profit of $3.6 million. They went public in 1978. By 1980, they're pulling in $415 million. And by 1983, exactly 1 decade after having 5 measly grand to their name, they officially crossed $1 billion in revenue.
To really wrap your head around the magnitude of that relentless drive, just look at where FedEx is today. We are talking about an $87.7 billion global behemoth. They employ over 500,000 people. You remember those original 14 tiny planes? Today, they operate a fleet of over 700 aircraft. For moving 186 packages on night 1, they now run over 5,000 facilities worldwide. I mean, to put that into perspective, contrast those staggering modern stats with that original $5,000 bank balance. It literally proves the monumental scale of what you can build if you just refuse to quit.
So what should you really take away from this? It's this: reckless starts, relentless finishes. Now, to be clear, Fred Smith never claimed gambling was a sound financial strategy. Nobody is telling you to take company funds to a casino. But the reality of building something huge is that early on, a little bit of recklessness, a giant leap of faith, is sometimes just part of the process. But listen to me. A reckless start means absolutely nothing if it isn't followed up by a relentless finish. It was sheer resilience, a complete unbreakable belief in a quote-unquote C-grade idea, and taking ultimate responsibility for the team that actually built this empire.
I want to leave you with this final thought today. The blackjack table makes a killer headline. It's that fun story everyone wants to tell at parties. But behind every sensational headline is the real, unglamorous grinding work. So, are you willing to put in the relentless follow-through to turn your own C-grade idea into a reality? When your back is totally against the wall, will you go down fighting for the people who believed in you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I'll see you in the next one.